Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed Lee. You are listening to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, historical, book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest little neighborhood in all of Boston. Our mission here at Reading with Your Kids is all about connection. Connecting kids with books, families with each other, and communities through the power of story. Every week we're joined by incredible authors and creators whose work lights up kids' lives. You can support our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, Audible, CastBox, Player FM, YouTube. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Two wonderful guests for you today. First up, Emily Bain Murphy. She's joining us to celebrate Lightseekers, A Kingdom of Shadows, her new middle grade novel. And later in the show, Aaron Starmer will be here to celebrate his middle grade novel, You Are Now Old Enough to Hear This. Hey, my friends, what if your next family adventure took you somewhere exciting, historic, and just a little bit wiggly? And when Fred the Snake and friends explore Charleston, Fred and his pals set off on a brand new journey, this time to the beautiful and historic city of Charleston, South Carolina. From the colorful charm of Rainbow Road to the bustling city market, from a bumpy and hilarious carriage ride to visits to the aquarium in the Children's Museum, Fred and his friends turn every step into a fun-filled discovery. This delightful story invites family and friends to explore a real American city through the eyes of a lovable snake and his adventurous crew, sparking curiosity, laughter, and maybe even inspiring your next family vacation. Written by Dr. Peter Cotton, who we loved having on Reading with Your Kids, this series comes from a truly remarkable storyteller. Before creating these joyful adventures, Dr. Peter was a renowned gastroenterologist and teacher, dedicating his life to helping others. Now he's sharing the same care and curiosity with children through stories that celebrate friendship, exploration, and learning. When Fred the Snake and Friends Explore Charleston is another wonderful chapter in the beloved Fred the Snake series, where every book brings new adventure, new friendships, and new discoveries. So pack your bags, bring your imagination, and join Fred on a journey you won't forget. Because with Fred the Snake, the real magic happens when we choose kindness and become a friend. Get your copy today, available on Amazon. Oh, you folks, you just missed a great 20 minutes of chat with me and my guest. We have a great time. Our guest is coming to us from the great state of Missouri. She's here to celebrate her debut middle grade novel. It's called Lightseekers, A Kingdom of Shadows. Please welcome to the show, Emily Bain Murphy. Emily, how are you?
I'm great, Jed. Thank you so much for having me.
Emily and I were chatting. She spent a lot of time here in the beautiful city of Boston, and she wasn't a visitor. People come in here and go, oh, I had the chowder, and we walked Paul Revere's house. You lived here, and you experienced some of the craziness that we experience in the city.
I did, and I ended up marrying somebody from Massachusetts, so we get back there frequently, and it is still one of my favorite places.
Now, did you live through any snowstorms? Because we just got 23 inches, and
that was wild. Yes.
You lived in a part of the city where you had to, once you dug out, you put something in your space to save it.
To save it, you had to, yeah. I know that well. Yeah. A couple really big snowstorms when I was at Tufts University. I remember we had a big snowstorm, I think 2 or 3 weeks before I left for summer vacation my freshman year, and I thought, maybe I made a mistake.
Yeah, because there've been some, we get snow, but every once in a while it's like like a couple of weekends ago, get 23 inches at the same time. Or I was just writing in my journal, there was, we had a young woman from China living with us back in 2015, I think it was. And over the whole course of the winter, we had 110 inches of snow.
Oh, and my goodness.
I remember taking a picture when it was just starting to melt. It was a picture of the snowbank in our front yard, and the pickets in our fence were just starting to pop up. It looked like blossoms coming up out of the ground.
What did she think of that?
What? I was on the road when the second of the mini storms hit, and so my beautiful wife was outside shoveling with my kids, and Sophia was wonderful, and I knew that she would help out. And I just called. I said, "Hey, Sophia, can you go outside and help Mom shovel?" Absolutely. And she ran right outside in her slippers.
Oh, no.
And my wife said, go back inside, put something on your feet, put a jacket on, whatever. So she came out and she was dressed much more appropriately. And my wife handed her a shovel, and poor Sophia looked at it and she said, I don't know how to use this.
That is adorable.
So she learned and she helped out, and it was great. But people don't want to hear about snow in Boston. They want to hear about Light Seekers, A Kingdom of Shadows. What's this book all about, Emily?
So Light Seekers, A Kingdom of Shadows is the first book in the Light Seekers trilogy. And it is about a 12-year-old boy named Finn. And he is having adventures with his younger sister, Lydia, and his best friend, Adrian. They're both, they're all kind of kids who don't have a lot of adults in their life, and they're making their way in this kingdom of Wildfell. And in Wildfell, after this event called the Great Betrayal that happened 10 years ago, the balance between the light and the shadows has switched. So the darkness is now growing stronger than the light. And so it's about this group of kids in this kind of ever-darkening world, and they meet this stranger who offers them the chance to go on an adventure to find a lake made out of light, which, if that's true, could obviously change not only their lives, but the fate of the entire kingdom. So it's kind of the beginning of that adventure.
Wow. I love it. I have no idea where a story like this, a kingdom like this, a universe like this comes from. What were you doing when this idea popped into your mind? And did it just pop all at once, or was it like something that just kind of grew?
Yeah, whenever I'm writing my stories, they always come from some sort of an image that pops into my head. And I find myself returning again and again to themes of what would happen if something that we sort of take for granted in our world disappeared. And I find that I like to live in that headspace because it just really teaches me ways to be more mindful and appreciative of the things that we have. And so I just started to think, what would happen if the shadows were stronger than the light and the light was getting dimmer each year? What would that look like? How would that affect people and their lives? And so I started to spin this kind of fantasy world, and it has a lot of fun creatures like these little butterfly-like creatures called hourflies, and they have stained glass wings that can light up when they're around a certain kind of a person. And so that kind of a person would obviously be very valuable in a world like this. And so I just kind of followed those threads, and this story poured out of me. I actually started writing it because publishing can be kind of slow, back during the height of the pandemic. And I think it was a story that I needed to write in a time that felt very dark, about purposefully looking for ways to seek the light.
Yeah. It'll be interesting looking back on that time 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
Talk about a dark time, and wow. I love that idea of thinking, what do we take for granted?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's spam. but, but what kind of things other than the light do you take for granted?
Yeah. So my very first novel, actually expanded on this idea as well. It's called The Disappearances, and it was a young adult fantasy that came out in 2017. And the premise of that book is also things are disappearing, sense, the ability to see the stars, music, things like that. And so I think probably the seed of this idea was planted even all the way back then. But it is something that I return to again and again as I'm just trying to always convey this idea that there's so much beauty around us, and love to explore that idea in a fictional world that looks at what would happen if some of these things weren't there. And then my dearest hope is that readers will close the book and look at the world that we are living in with just a little more sense of magic.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea of encouraging our kids to be more grateful, more gratefully. And part of that is understanding what it is that we have in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do think that this book, I think I wrote it at a time when I really needed it. And I think this moment that it's coming out also feels, just like the right moment. It does feel like the world is very dark right now. And I love the idea of, I wrote this book mainly for my own kids. My oldest at the time was 10. He's 14 now, but I have a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And I love the idea of a story that can kind of cast a vision for them and for other readers about what does it look like to purposefully seek out the light, whether that's faith, beauty, hope, selflessness, kindness. What does that look like? And I think that fiction gives us such a beautiful way of exploring those ideas in a more graspable way, both for young minds and just for anybody who's going to pick up these books.
Well, I think it's so important because we are bombarded with the negative.
Right.
I mean,
yes.
The news, the slogan in news is, if it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
Algorithms that we're so addicted to these days is all about infuriating us and keeping us engaged by making us angry. Mm-hmm. And it's one thing for an old guy like me to kind of deal with it, but boy, I can't imagine how difficult it would be to stay positive and grateful if I was 10 or 12 or 15.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And so I just think it's so important for those of us in the arts or just in any sort of position of influence with young people to take that seriously, of trying to cast a vision of loveliness for them to bond to. And I was actually doing a 2-year spiritual formation course, Christian spiritual formation course, when I started to write this book. And I just think casting that vision of who do you want to become? Who do you want to be like? And what are some of the steps that you can take to do that? Those are really important ideas for kids, especially in the middle grade era of their lives, because they're really starting to make the friendships and the decisions and starting to dream about what they would like their life to be like. And so I'm really happy to be writing for this age group. I think it's a lot of fun to get to explore fantastical adventures, but also to really be exploring some of these important, larger ideas with their minds.
I love that idea that, that asking yourself, what do I want my life to be? Mm-hmm. I know I'm mangling the quote that you gave me, but it's that who do I want to surround myself? What do I want my future to be? And I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I was on the road I saw something either online or in a newspaper saying kids who have dreams do better in school and they're healthier and they're happier. And like going, well, what kid doesn't have dreams? This is ridiculous. What kind of a study is this? But then I thought, well, let me do an experiment. And so I had 5 or 6 shows that week and 300 or 400 kids at every show. And I said, how many of you guys have a dream? How many of you guys, just raise your hand if you know when I grow up, I want to do X, Y, or Z. And at none of those shows did more than 40% of the kids raise their hands.
Wow.
And that just blew me away. And it's like, to the point where I'm asking teachers, did I ask the kids, did they understand that question? Did I ask it right? And they're like, yeah, you did. The teachers weren't necessarily surprised. So I think as parents, I think it's really important for us to talk with our kids and ask them not to test them, but just say, hey, you have some agency. You have the power.
Yes.
You don't have to put your hands in fate. You can do something.
Yes, and I think that is a big theme that I explore, both in this first book and then throughout the series that's planned, is who do you want to become? And the people that you surround yourself with can greatly influence that. But I think casting that vision of the light is beautiful, and if you can cast a vision for the human mind to grasp onto and want for themselves, that is way more than half the battle. And so I think that's what I'm always trying to do, is to cast that vision for them to hopefully grasp and want for themselves.
Yeah. I'm curious, as a mom of, I think you said, 10 and 14-year-old, how are you helping them deal with all the negativity they may be encountering online? Or are you one of those parents like, no phone for you?
So yeah, we don't let our kids have social media. We've started with phones that are very, very locked down and can't get really on the internet. And that's been really good. I think that a huge part of it for us is I love to go to places of beauty. So we have a botanical garden here in St. Louis that is just so lovely, and I spend so much time there, and I'm always dragging my kids along. And I just think spending that time surrounding yourself purposefully with things that are beautiful to fill your eyes and your mind with, and again, to just be grateful for them. So we spend a lot of time at the botanical gardens, regardless of season, because they even have like a special light show around Christmas time that I just love. And so that's been something that I've really tried to instill in my kids, even just, oh, look at that sunset. There's so much beauty around us all the time. And I think that, again, if you can set your mind on things that are lovely and true and good, that goes a long way when the rest of the world is dark or is feeling hard. And I have to do that myself, even if I've spent a lot of time looking at the news this week. I have to take time to refill the well with things that are beautiful and good and true. Because otherwise it gets to feel very overwhelming.
Yeah. I like that idea of refill the well with beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than going to the botanical gardens, do you have a little trick that helps you fill up that well with beauty?
Well, I'm always looking for beautiful things to look at, whether it's art. I'm a person of faith, so I love to spend time in scripture or listening to podcasts like this that are uplifting. Yeah, I'm always searching for beauty, whether it's going on walks, that helps me. I find that being in nature, even though I would not categorize myself as like an outdoorsy girl, but I do love gardens and nature and books and art and music. Just always trying to find all of those avenues that will refill the well, especially after just spending any time kind of looking at the reality that the news portrays and reminding myself that that actually is not the whole picture.
Right. Yeah. It's a very small part of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
What an important lesson for our kids to hear. You know, as they're being bombarded, because even if our kids aren't necessarily watching TV or watching the news with us, or, you know, plugged into a news channel, they're going to school with kids who might be. They're going to school with teachers. You know, back in the day, teachers, like, it's math class, we talk about math. It's history, we talk about history. Now, a lot of teachers feel very comfortable saying it's math class. Let's talk about politics. Yeah, so I think our kids are going to be exposed to things. I had a media literacy class when my daughter was 8. I was taking it, and a very wise nun who's become a friend said, "Don't try to ban anything. Don't, but instead experience it with them." And that was such a great, and talk about it. And what a great piece of advice. It really helped strengthen the relationship I had with my daughter at the time. I think she was in 7th or 8th grade. And,
yes. I can totally see that, because I think sometimes if you just flat out ban something, it almost makes it more appealing, or it's just that mystery. I think as humans, we kind of just, that curiosity can actually make it more attractive. But I think one of the ideas that I'm really trying to explore in this Light Seekers series is the idea that instead of banning something or just being really down on it, if you can cast a vision for something that is good and make that appealing and make that something that they naturally want to choose for themselves, so that they retain that agency instead of it just being me saying, well, this is what you should do. If I can cast a vision of something that is beautiful and true and good and full of light, and then they learn through that, that actually is what I want. That is what I want to choose of my own accord. I think that's really the greatest thing that we can do for our kids.
Yeah. Give them help them see a vision.
Yes.
Say, yep. And how are we going to get there? How can I help you get there?
Yes, exactly.
Hey, these are all great conversations we can have with our kids specifically. And we encourage our families to continue reading with your kids, even after your kids become independent readers and get into middle grade novels like Light Seekers, A Kingdom of Shadows. Let's continue to read with them. Let's continue to co-read with them and talk about the books over dinner time, on the way to soccer, on the way to ballet, on the way to school. What kind of conversations do you think specifically families can have while they're co-reading Light Seekers?
Well, I love the idea, first of all, that parents would read this aloud with their kids. I love the quote that C.S. Lewis says about, I'm going to butcher it, but it's basically like, you know, if a book is only good for children, it's not really a good book. Like adults, if it's a good book, it's a good book for everyone. And so that was my goal when writing this. I was writing it primarily for my own kids and kids of their ages, but also wanting it to be something that an adult could lose themselves in and just enjoy being part of that world. But I think when co-reading as a family, there's a lot of different characters in this book that are going to be along for the adventure. And they're coming in with different personalities, different viewpoints. Some of them are very optimistic, bordering on naive. Some are very pessimistic and cynical. And so I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to discuss, how do these characters make you feel? Who do you relate to in this group? What would you do in this situation? Because there's going to be some decisions that they have to make. And ultimately, I think that, again, just coming back to this idea of casting a vision of what is lovely and true. What do you see in this story that is lovely and true? And is any of that sort of capturing your imagination in a way that you can bring into your own life?
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned different characters. I was excited to know that your main character is named Finn.
Yes.
I have some, my kids are grown. They have their own homes and families and they're married. We don't have any grandkids. We have grand dogs, and I will occasionally read to the grand dog. But we have the person I read to occasionally is one of our little neighbors. He's 3 or 4 years old, and his name is Finn.
Really?
And I actually picked up a book. As you can imagine, we get sent books all the time here. And I just picked up a book that kind of caught his eye and opened up, and it's like, oh, main character's Finn. Hey, so maybe me and Finn, if he's still living in the neighborhood, we'll be reading Light Seekers in a few years.
Oh, I would love that. You'll have to let me know what you think.
Yeah. So I'm curious. This is, as you said, a beautiful word. I mean, the butterflies with the stained glass wings. I had a situation. I was down in Costa Rica in the rainforest and had this ginormous blue butterfly land on my shoulder. Oh. And I didn't know it at the time. Someone who was with us said, hey, and we got a picture of it with the blue butterfly here. And I was wearing blue and it was great. But I'm imagining like stained glass blue. Whoa, that would be crazy.
Yes.
This is such an amazing universe that you've created. How do you keep everything straight? Because you're making these rules, and sometimes maybe you forget. Do you ever write yourself into a corner and go, "Uh-oh, this ain't"? I either got to change the rules or I got to go back and rewrite this.
I'm trying to think if I've written myself into a corner. I don't think I've written myself into a corner, but I definitely have had times when my editor or copy editor will say, oh, this kind of contradicts something that you've said back here. So it is an exercise in learning how to keep all of your rules straight for the reader. And I have gotten pretty good about starting to take notes for myself to refer back to. Okay. Anytime that you create a magic system or a fantasy world, I do think it's important to be organized in that. It's funny because prior to this book, I had written historical fiction mysteries, either straight historical fiction mysteries with no magic or some historical fiction mysteries with some fantastical elements in them, like the novel that I mentioned, The Disappearances. And I thought, well, this will be easier because I can just make everything up and I don't have to do all this research about, did they have wardrobes at this time or closets or what have you. It doesn't matter. I can just completely make it up out of my brain, which was really, really fun until it came time to do like the copy edits, where they were asking me all these very specific questions about distances and how far is this from here. And this is my first book with a map, so I'm really excited about that. But then I came to the point where I was like, oh no, I can't Google this. It's like in my brain somewhere and I have to go back and figure out exactly the distance and the amount of time it would take to get from here to here. So it was really fun up until that point. And now as I'm continuing on with this series, I do feel like I'm getting a little more disciplined about organizing all of my items to come back to.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't work everything works this way except Tuesday the 13th, and it works.
Right, exactly.
So, Light Seekers, A Kingdom of Shadows, book 1 in a trilogy. When are we going to have to wait 10 years for the next books to come out, or?
I'm just finishing the manuscript for book 2, which I'm really excited about. It is really fun to get back with these characters, they've started to feel like my friends, and I'm hoping that readers will feel the same way. It's definitely a found family. There's lots of coziness, and I was greatly inspired by the Redwall books growing up, and so there's lots of like food descriptions and adventure. And so as I mentioned, just finished writing book 2, and that is supposed to be coming out hopefully March or April of next year. So not too far to wait.
Awesome. Well, hey, come on back next year and we'll celebrate book 2.
I would love it. We can talk about Massachusetts some more. It'll be great.
Absolutely. Hey, please tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Lightseekers, A Kingdom of Shadows, and find out more about Emily Bain Murphy.
Yes, thank you so much. You can find me at www.emilybainmurphy.com. And then the book series itself actually has its own really fun landing page that Penguin Random House has put together. And you can find that at www.jointhelightseekers.com.
Awesome. We've had a great fun time speaking to the author of Lightseekers, A Kingdom of Shadows. It's a new middle grade novel from our guest, Emily Bain Murphy. Hey, Emily, see you next March.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me, Jed.
Hey, this episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by AspireDrinks.com. Hey, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever wanted a little extra energy, but not the kind that makes your heart race or leaves you crashing an hour later? Well, that's exactly why I want to tell you about Aspire Drinks. You'll find them at AspireDrinks.com. Aspire calls itself a healthy energy drink, and honestly, that description really fits. Instead of loading you up with sugar or extreme caffeine, Aspire delivers a gentle, steady boost with 80 milligrams of natural caffeine from green tea and guarana. That's about half the caffeine of most energy drinks, enough to help you stay focused without the jitters or the crash. It's also 0 sugar, 0 calories, and 0 artificial additives, which makes it a great choice for parents, teachers, and anyone trying to make healthier choices while still getting things done. And get this, it actually tastes great, light, crisp, and lightly sparkling, with flavors like sweet cherry, raspberry acai, mango lemonade. That's what I love. No heavy aftertaste and easy on the stomach. Aspire is packed with B and C vitamins, biotin, and ginger. And it's vegan, gluten-free, keto-friendly, really designed for real life. And just for Reading with Your Kids listeners, you can get an exclusive discount of 20% off. That's the highest discount available when you shop at AspireDrinks.com and use our promo code READ. That's READ at AspireDrinks.com. Healthy energy done right. Join us right now from the beautiful Green Mountain state of Vermont. Our guest is here today to celebrate his new middle grade novel. It's called You Are Now Old Enough to Hear This. Please welcome to the show, Aaron Starmer. Aaron, how are you?
I'm good, Jed. Thanks for having me.
Delighted to have you on. Aaron and I were just mentioning that his state is now and every year at this time is invaded by my Massachusetts neighbors looking to get some skiing in.
Indeed, yes. Everywhere I look. But that's all right. That's what brings money to the state. That's what keeps people employed. So we're happy to have them.
Yes, and it's fun as Vermont is in the wintertime and skiing. It's a beautiful state. If you've never visited, it is well worth your while. It's just a great place. It's real pretty, and there's lots of great things to do.
Indeed, yes. Yeah. And, people say that they come for the winter, but they stay for the summer. So I moved up here about 10 years ago with my family just because we fell in love with it and wanted a slower lifestyle, and we get that up here.
And you also have an added benefit of of Champy, the lake monster that swims in Lake Champlain.
That's right. I've yet to see him, but my kids are always hunting for him when we're there. So if I see him, I will let the world know.
I was just over in Scotland and went and visited Loch Ness, and I think we saw the monster, or it was dirt on the window of the boat I was on. I don't know which, but I prefer to think that I saw the monster.
I have been there too. I did not see it, but I trust you. I think it's there. I want to believe. I want to believe in Nessie. I want to believe in Champy. I want to believe in all cryptids, which actually is in the book. There is some talk of cryptids in the book. So that's a fun little connection there.
So let's talk about, you're now old enough to hear this. Why are middle grade kids going to want to read this book?
Well, hopefully the title gets them right off the bat. And that was the hope of me and my publisher, would have this fun title that would make kids think, oh, there's something kind of mysterious in this book, something maybe a little scary. But the title is You Are Now Old Enough to Hear This. So it's saying to kids, hey, we think you're prepared for a story like this. And it's a creepy story, but it's one with a lot of heart. So I'm not going to give away all the spoilers because it's full of spoilers. But I can tell you more about the book if you want.
Oh, absolutely. Who are the characters that we're going to meet in the book? So
the main character is a boy named Roman, and it takes place just after his 12th birthday, and his grandfather, Grandpa Henry, passes away, and he's tasked with cleaning out his grandpa's house over the summer. His father thinks he needs more to do in his life. He could help the family by cleaning out the house. So while he's cleaning out the house, Roman starts to discover these strange things, such as a jar of formaldehyde hidden in an old toy box. He finds a strange little handwritten book of a story that takes place long ago. And he starts to realize that this all could be connected to this story that his grandfather used to tell his family, and it was called the story of the Toe Beast. And the Toe Beast is sort of a piece of family lore that Roman doesn't actually know because he's the youngest of many cousins, and he was always too scared to hear the story when Grandpa Henry would tell it. But all his cousins knew it. So this is sort of a moment in Roman's life where he says, can I confront these dark and strange stories of my family, and can I find out more about my family that the other cousins don't know about? So that's what kicks it off.
I love that. The Toe Beast.
Yes.
Is that it grow from some toe cheese that in someone's chute for too long?
Well, that's the question. And he asks himself, is it a beast made of toes or a beast that eats toes? But his Grandpa Henry only has 9 toes. He's missing his pinky toe. So it has something to do with his Grandpa Henry's missing pinky toe.
The minute you said that he found a bottle of a jar with formaldehyde, I figured that there was an appendage missing somewhere.
Yes. And so, that kicks it off. And then there's a number of strange objects and strange stories that are all connected to, Roman's parents, Roman's grandparents, Roman's cousins. And it's one of those tales where, if anyone's been part of a larger family, they know that you've got family lore and family history. And often if they're older cousins, they go through these sort of rites of passages, learning these stories, and learning the sort of truth of their family. And sometimes that truth is a little scarier and more difficult than you might, think. But, there's also a lot of love and bonding in the family. So that's part of it as well.
Yeah. As you were talking, I had this my mind is weird, and I just have these flashes sometimes during conversations. And I thought back a few years ago, we crawled up to the attic, and usually when we go up to the attic, we just go a straight shot up the little ladder and walk straight ahead to get our Christmas things. We don't usually turn around and look at the other end of the attic, which is where my son used to go up when he wanted to be alone. He would go up and play. And one day he just stopped doing that. And when we turned and looked down the other end of the attic and had the light on, we found this little play scene that my son had just left when he was 6 or 7 years old. And we were rediscovering it like 15, 20 years later. And it was so cool.
Yeah. I mean, I love that idea of, and Roman does find a lot of this stuff in an old attic. I love that idea of these sort of time capsules that are hidden in your own house and give you access to just to something that you haven't thought about in years or something you've never thought about. I mean, I love it when you move in a new house or you're moving out of an old house and maybe you find something in the walls or maybe you find something in the floorboards, that just, opens up your idea to all these stories or all these memories. And I know, I've got kids that are 12 and 8 and, even now just finding stuff from when they were babies, it just seems like so long ago. But it's all part of one big story.
Yeah. I love that. One of the things we've asked a lot of the authors who write spooky middle grade is, why do you think so many middle grade kids love the spooky genre?
I mean, there's a bit of danger to it that doesn't have any physical danger involved. It's not like confronting these things in real life or, doing something dangerous that could cause you harm. But you can sort of work through these feelings and have that catharsis that you're looking for in a safe way. And, I think we all feel that. And some people, as you grow older, it might be too emotionally charged, some of these things. I often find when I write spooky books, the adults are the ones that are a little more bothered by it than the children, because the children have this natural curiosity to want to learn about the world, while the adults see this creepy content and might make jumps of logic or just associate it with bad memories with themselves. But kids are building their sort of relationship with the world and what's safe for them and what isn't. And I think kids are very good at determining that. And, again, like the title of the book, if someone sees the title of the book and decides this sounds too creepy for me, I am not too old enough to hear this yet, so I'm gonna save this for later. I was like that. I was naturally a curious kid, but there was lots of content that my friends when I was in middle school, I remember all my friends were reading Stephen King, and I wasn't ready for Stephen King. I didn't start reading that till I was an adult. So yeah, I think it's just a natural part of figuring out who you are, what your boundaries are, and safe ways of doing it.
Yeah. Stephen King, boy, I was a huge Stephen King fan up until the moment I became a dad.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this in the past. It was just, I was in the middle of an Anne Rice novel, and my son came into the world, and we got home from the hospital, and I got my wife comfortable, and I picked up the baby and made sure that he was comfortable. And then I went to pick up the book again, and I think I read a paragraph, and I said, nope, don't want to go to this world again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I get that. There is so much of that content since being a parent that you react differently to. And yeah, that's there's nothing wrong with that. That's what's great about literature, is that, you can confront it in different ways and different points of your life and find it again or walk away from it and find something new.
Yeah. Tell me, you mentioned that you weren't ready for Stephen King in middle grades, or when your friends were doing it. Does creating these spooky stories and thinking about these situations in your own mind, is it ever difficult for you?
And naturally I'm going, there's going to be a lot more under the surface that I'm thinking about that might find its way into the story that I don't realize. It's any writer, usually experiences that. So when I'm exploring these creepy things, sometimes it gets me thinking, a lot more existentially and thinking about my role as a parent and my role as a storyteller and how these things affect kids. So, I'm careful about that in some ways, but I also know that it's an experience for me to work through the feelings that I had when I was young too, when I was confused and a little scared. And I can do it in a much more, in a way that's easier to communicate to the world what I was feeling than I could have at that time.
Tell me, was there anything in an early draft of the story that you wrote and that you loved, and that when you looked back on it, you said, nah, this is just a little bit too creepy?
Yeah, well, the story came from it started out when I wrote a sort of short story that's set in the 1950s about a mysterious girl who's sort of a wild child that comes out of the woods into a small sort of typical 1950s small town, and she's got a pack of dogs with her. And the story goes on to tell about how she starts to attract all the pet dogs from various homes, and how it affects the town. And I originally wrote that as a short story with this idea of a very creepy and disturbing end of why she was doing it. But it just wasn't working right for me. And then I eventually realized, well, this can be incorporated with some other ideas I've been having about sort of family secrets and family stories. And so I changed the ending of what was going to happen at the ending of that story. And that's sort of the key that locks this whole mystery together, is what happens with this girl and these dogs. And, it made it less creepy and more emotionally resonant and more sort of connected to families and family legacies and family histories, which was a more interesting path to take it than the way I was going to take it, which was going to be much more dark and apocalyptic.
Yeah. I love the idea of talking to our kids about family history, about people in the family that have passed and that our kids will never meet. I'm surprised. When my kids were younger, and I always volunteered to drive because it was a great, talk about a sneaky parent trick. You're driving the minivan and you have 7 kids in the back. Pretty soon they forget that you're up front driving, and you learn everything that's going on at the school or in the dance class or in the sports team. And so it's a great way to get information. But I was always surprised in talking to some of my kids' friends that they didn't know much about even like what their parents did for a living. And that surprised me because my kids, my daughters never met my grandmother, but she could tell you stories about my grandmother because we celebrated them all the time when she was young.
Yeah. And, I had two different experiences with grandparents. I had a grandmother that I saw fairly often and ended up moving into our home when I was a teenager. So I had a very strong bond with her. And then other grandparents that I saw once every 5 years and passed, a grandmother that passed away when I was very young. And so I was confronting a lot of that, in that I didn't know a heck of a lot about them, where I knew almost everything about the other grandparents. And that was just also the two approaches of my mother's family versus my father's family. My mother's family were much more, about sharing those stories, while my father's family were much more private. And yeah, I see that with kids all the time, is when you talk to kids, especially my kids' friends, some of them, this is a big part of who they are, telling their family story. And then other ones, it's, each generation is something new. Each generation is a new story.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping parents, because we want parents to co-read and read their novels their middle grade kids are reading and then talk about it together. I'm hoping that you're now old enough to hear this could inspire some of those more private families to open up more and share a little bit about their family lore and history.
Yeah. And, I think it's more that people just don't make a habit of it. They might want to, or they might not have thought about it as much, but, I've had a lot of fun as an adult, sort of learning from my parents more stories about when they were young, and my wife's family. I remember, after a family wedding, sitting down with her grandmother, and her grandmother just started telling us stories about when she was a teenager and when she was in her 20s. And these are stories that no one had ever heard before. And it wasn't because they were particularly risque or dark or anything like that. It just never came out. But opening that opportunity up, I think, gets people really, excited to share. I know my father, who's in his 80s now, he's writing down it's not quite a memoir, but he's writing down all his memories because he wants to get it out there to share with his descendants.
Excellent. Well, maybe when it's finished, we'll have your dad on to talk about it.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how he's pretty shy in that department. I don't know if he's ever going to look to publish it, but I think it's a document just to say he was here and these are the things he's done. And maybe my kids will read it when they're older and get a view into him and then pass it on to their kids and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Tell me, being an author for kids, is that always something that you aspire to?
Well, I always wanted to write and I always was interested in writing, and from a very young age, I was writing stories, I was writing songs, movies and plays and things like that. And at a certain point, I tried to write a novel for adults, and it was, sort of a big behemoth mess of a thing, 700 pages with 50 characters and this and that. And, it was never going to get published, but I had noticed that, the best characters in it were the young characters that they felt the most authentic to me. And I said, well, maybe this is who I should be writing for. Maybe this is what my voice is. And so I started writing for young readers, and I didn't know a lot about the industry itself beyond what I liked as a kid. And I sort of tried to recapture some of the things that I liked or some of the things that I wanted to see. And, through a series of luck and work and, timing, I got my foot in the door and they haven't pushed me out the door since. So.
Well, that's fantastic. Hey, can you give us a preview of what might be coming in the future from you?
Well, often I will switch between middle grade and young adult fiction. So next year, I'm not sure exactly when it's going to come out. I have a young adult novel called The Swans, which is sort of a satire. It's a lot of my young adult books are kind of dark, but it's a satire about a town where the swans that are in the town pond keep on being murdered, and they've got there's a teenager that's going to do something about it. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's sort of this curse on this town, and he's going to do something about it. He decides at a certain point, and it's sort of about, trying to find your purpose in life at a young age, and trying to make a mark on the world, and trying to, make some change locally, when you can't make some big change nationally or internationally.
Why don't we tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you, and now old enough to hear this and find out more about you?
Well, you can go to my website, which is just aaronstarmer.com. And the book is published by Penguin Workshop, which is part of Penguin Random House. You can go to their site and see all about it there. And, hopefully it will be on the front of every bookstore that you walk by in late March when it comes out. I live in Vermont, and we are known for our independent bookstores here. We've got what's called the Vermont Bookstore Tour, which I think is about 22 different bookstores throughout the state that are all independent bookstores. And if you go into one and ask for a Vermont Bookstore Tour passport, they'll give you a passport that you can get stamped every time you go in one of these bookstores. So with my last book, when it came out last year, I decided I was going to try to visit them all in one day, which then I did the calculations, and that wasn't possible. Yeah. I did it in two. But it was a great way to sort of meet all these booksellers, and I knew some of them, but connect with these communities, and hopefully, you'll at least be seeing this book here in Vermont in the front of these small bookstores, which in my mind is still the future of book selling, because everything is getting filtered out by big booksellers, and these small community stores where they make special idiosyncratic picks are where you find some of your favorite books.
Yeah. I agree. And don't forget to ask, even if you buy your own copy from a local indie bookstore, go to the public library and ask them to stock the book too.
Oh yeah. Always support your libraries. I mean, that's where I do most of my book shopping these days, because, I love to sample a lot of different things, and it's an expensive hobby otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a great time speaking to the author of You Are Now Old Enough to Hear This. It's a new middle grade novel from our guest, Aaron Starmer. Aaron, thanks for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you, Jed. It was a delight.
Hey, that's a wrap for this episode of Reading with Your Kids. If this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, would you please think about sharing a link to the show with someone you love? Leave a 5-star review, and of course, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite shows. We really love to have you connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids. At Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on X. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And our website is readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Emily Bain Murphy. Please be sure to check out Light Seekers, A Kingdom of Shadows. I also want to thank Aaron Starmer. Please be sure to check out You Are Now Old Enough to Hear This. I want to thank my team, Chris Doherty, Jackson Sotalara. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Why? Well, we thank you for taking the time to join us. We thank you for everything you are doing for your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, nephews, the kids in your class. And believe it or not, you are making this world a better place. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.